Welcome back, fellow travelers of the galaxy far, far away. I am your chronicler tonight, a keeper of tales that echo through the cosmic void. If you are new to our journeys through shadow and starlight, I invite you to join our fellowship by pressing that like button and subscribing for more forbidden chronicles from across the cosmos. Tonight, we venture beyond the edge of known space, beyond the comfort of familiar legends, into mysteries so dark that even the Sith Lords whispered them only in their deepest meditations. Listen now to words intercepted from the Chiss archives. In the unknown regions, transmitted across the void just before 17, entire star systems vanished from all records. The message was brief, crackling through damaged hyperspace relays. The Grysk were never the true threat. They were fleeing from something older, something that whispers through the void between stars. The Emperor knew. He always knew. And now they are coming home. But what were they fleeing from? What could terrify a species that conquered dimensions? In the deepest vaults beneath the ruined Jedi Temple, archaeologists discovered texts that speak of the silence before, a time when the Force itself went dark for 7 days. Ancient Rakata star charts mark vast regions of space with symbols meaning "do not wake." Even the Celestials, beings of unimaginable power, simply vanished at the height of their civilization, leaving behind only warnings carved in quantum crystalline, structures that exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously. The Emperor spent his final years obsessed with something he discovered in the unknown regions, something that made him abandon his dreams of galactic domination and instead focus desperately on a project he called the Existence Engine. His final transmission, recorded moments before his death aboard the second Death Star, contained coordinates to a derelict superstar destroyer drifting in interdimensional space. Along with those coordinates came 3 words that have haunted New Republic intelligence for decades: the Fourth Seal. Tonight, we follow that transmission to its source. We descend into the twisted reality of the Maw, where space itself bends, like heated metal, where ancient Imperial research stations drift between dimensions like ghost ships carrying cargo that should never have been disturbed. We seek answers to questions that the galaxy was never meant to ask. What lies beyond the edge of existence itself? What cosmic horror could make the Sith themselves prey for ignorance? And why do children across the galaxy now wake screaming? From dreams of stars going silent, one by one, until only the void remains. The chronicles begin now. The Fourth Seal awaits. 25 years have passed since the Battle of Exegol, and the New Republic believes the galaxy has finally found peace. But peace is an illusion when built upon foundations of forgotten horror. You are Commander Lyra Kalen, former rebel intelligence officer turned xenoarchaeologist, haunted by classified reports that speak of Imperial projects so terrible they were hidden even from the Emperor's inner circle. The derelict superstar destroyer Ravager's wake drifts through the Maw like a metallic cathedral dedicated to madness. Its massive hull stretches nearly 20 kilometers, scarred by weapons that fire reality itself as ammunition. Emergency lights flicker in patterns that seem almost deliberate, casting shadows that move independently of their sources. The ship groans with sounds that no machine should make, as if the metal itself remembers the experiments conducted within its corridors. You stand on the bridge of your research vessel, staring at the massive wreckage through reinforced transparisteel. The Maw's twisted energies create aurora patterns across the viewport, reality bending like heated durasteel around gravitational anomalies that exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously. This is space where physics becomes suggestion rather than law. where Imperial scientists came to study phenomena that conventional science insists cannot exist. Dr. Taslin Brace approaches from behind, his weathered boots echoing against the deck plating. The elderly Corellian archaeologist carries himself with the careful movements of someone who has seen too much and lived to regret the knowledge. His grey beard trembles slightly as he speaks, voice barely above a whisper to avoid disturbing the ship's sensitive instruments. Commander, I've reviewed the Imperial transmission logs again. The coordinates Palpatine sent weren't random. This ship was conducting research into something called Project Void Walker. According to fragmentary records, they were attempting to map the spaces between quantum possibilities. Beside him, K2X7 processes data streams through photoreceptors that flicker with patterns of blue and amber light. The reprogrammed Imperial security droid designated Kronos contains memory fragments from Operation Blackwing, classified experiments that went far beyond creating undead soldiers. His vocabulator crackles with static as damaged vocal circuits struggle to form words. Commander Kalen, my analysis indicates this vessel was not destroyed by conventional weapons. The damage patterns suggest reality restructuring events. Something fundamental was altered about the nature of existence within specific sections of the ship. The bridge falls silent except for the ambient hum of life support systems working to maintain atmosphere within the research vessel. Through the transparisteel, you can see sections of the Ravager's wake that appear to phase in and out of existence, as if the ship exists in multiple quantum states simultaneously. Entire decks flicker between damaged and pristine conditions, suggesting experiments that may still be active after decades of abandonment. You've spent years tracking the Emperor's most secret projects, following trails of encrypted data through abandoned Imperial facilities across the Outer Rim. Operation Cinder was merely a distraction designed to hide the evacuation of personnel and equipment to facilities like this one. The Empire's true legacy wasn't political control, but something far more dangerous, knowledge that could reshape the fundamental nature of reality itself. The Maw surrounds the derelict vessel like a cosmic wound, its gravitational anomalies creating regions where time flows at different rates. Stars visible through the twisted space appear as streaks of light, their photons stretched across centuries of subjective time. In some areas, space itself has crystallized into structures that hurt to observe directly, geometric patterns that exist in too many dimensions for organic minds to fully comprehend. As your research vessel approaches the docking bay of the Ravager's wake, emergency systems begin detecting readings that shouldn't be possible. Quantum field fluctuations spike beyond measurable limits. Chronometer readings become inconsistent as temporal distortions affect different parts of your ship. Most disturbing of all, the force-sensitive navigation crystals begin resonating with frequencies that register as negative energy, as if something within the derelict vessel is actively draining reality from the surrounding space. Dr. Brace reviews sensor data on a portable holocaster, his face growing pale as he interprets the readings. Commander, whatever experiments they conducted here, they're still active. The ship is generating quantum interference patterns that suggest ongoing manipulation of probability matrices. We're not just approaching a derelict vessel, we're approaching an active research facility that has been running unsupervised for 25 years. The docking procedures complete with mechanical precision, but something feels fundamentally wrong about the connection. The airlock seals engage, but atmospheric readings show compositions that include elements not found on any periodic table. Your research vessel shudders as gravitational fields fluctuate, reality itself seeming to bend around the point where your ship connects to the Imperial derelict. Through the airlock, The Ravager's wake awaits with corridors that stretch into darkness beyond the reach of any illumination. The ship's central archive contained secrets that the galaxy was never meant to discover, knowledge that could explain why children across 17 star systems now wake, screaming from dreams of stars going silent. The investigation begins now. The airlock hisses open with a sound like reality tearing at its seams. You step aboard the Ravager's wake, your boots echoing against deck plating that feels somehow wrong beneath your feet, as if the metal remembers things it should have forgotten decades ago. The corridor stretches ahead into shadows that seem to absorb light rather than merely block it, emergency strips casting a sickly amber glow that reveals more than it illuminates. Dr. Brace activates his portable scanner, the device immediately registering readings that violate several laws of physics. The atmospheric composition shows trace elements that exist in quantum superposition, simultaneously present and absent until observed directly. Temperature readings fluctuate between absolute zero and stellar core temperatures within microsecond intervals, yet your environmental suits register perfectly normal conditions. "This is unprecedented," he whispers, voice barely audible through the comm system. "The ship exists in multiple probability states simultaneously. We're walking through a vessel that is simultaneously destroyed and intact, occupied and abandoned, experimental and operational." Kronos processes environmental data through sensors that were never designed to measure impossible phenomena. His optical array flickers between spectrums of light that don't technically exist, attempting to map corridors that extend into dimensions beyond the standard 3. "Commander, my navigation systems are detecting 17 different layouts for this vessel, all equally valid according to quantum probability mathematics. You make the decision that will change everything." Standing before the central archive access terminal, you place your hand on the biometric scanner and accept full responsibility for whatever knowledge lies within the Imperial databases. The weight of that choice settles into your bones like radiation exposure, a slow poisoning of certainty that will never fully leave your system. The scanner activates with a pulse of crimson light, recognizing your New Republic credentials and granting access to files that should have been destroyed with the Empire's fall. Holographic displays illuminate the archive chamber, casting your shadows against walls covered in crystalline formations that pulse with their own internal light. These aren't natural crystals, but quantum storage matrices, each one containing petabytes of data about experiments that pushed beyond the boundaries of known science. Ancient Rakata star charts materialize in the air before you, their holographic projections showing the galaxy as it existed 50,000 years ago. But these aren't ordinary navigation charts. Vast regions of space are marked with symbols that your translation software identifies as warnings, complex hieroglyphs that convey concepts like reality becomes uncertain here and the sleepers must not wake. Most disturbing are the regions marked with symbols that translate simply as void zones, areas where the Rakata charts show no stars, no planets, no matter of any kind, yet the gravitational mathematics suggests something massive exists within the emptiness. The discovery sends ice through your veins. The Rakata, builders of the first galactic civilization, encountered something that terrified them so completely they mapped the galaxy around it rather than through it. Their technology could manipulate the Force on a galactic scale, yet they chose to avoid entire sectors of space rather than investigate what lay within them. You access deeper files, your clearance codes unlocking Imperial research into phenomena that existed long before the Empire's rise. References to the silence before appear in dozens of documents describing a period in galactic history when the Force itself went dormant for 7 standard days. During this time, Every force-sensitive being across the galaxy simultaneously lost their connection to the universal energy field. When the force returned, entire civilizations had vanished, leaving behind only quantum shadows, impressions of what once existed, burned into the fabric of space-time itself. The Celestials vanished during this period. Beings capable of moving stars and creating the Maw itself simply disappeared at the height of their power, abandoning massive construction projects that spanned multiple star systems. Their final messages, decoded from quantum crystalline structures found throughout the galaxy, speak of something they called the Watchers, entities that existed in the spaces between possibilities, feeding on the collapse of potential futures. Dr. Brace discovers a data cache containing Emperor Palpatine's private research notes, their contents more disturbing than any Sith holocron. The Emperor wasn't seeking ultimate power through the dark side of the Force. His final years were consumed by desperate attempts to understand and prepare for something he discovered in the unknown regions, something that made his galactic ambitions seem trivial by comparison. The notes describe cosmic alignments that occur every 500,000 years, configurations of gravitational fields that create resonance patterns across multiple dimensions. The last alignment coincided with the Celestials' disappearance. The next alignment is approaching rapidly, perhaps within your lifetime. During these alignments, barriers between dimensions become permeable, allowing entities that exist outside conventional reality to observe and interact with the physical universe. Standing in the archive chamber, surrounded by evidence of cosmic horror, you realize this investigation has become something far greater than archaeological research. The galaxy faces a threat that makes the Empire seem insignificant, something that has been patiently waiting for the right cosmic conditions to resume activities that began before the first star ignited. The fourth seal mentioned in Palpatine's final transmission refers to barriers maintaining dimensional stability. 3 seals have already failed. When the fourth fails, the cascade effect will be irreversible. Your quest for answers has become a race against cosmic forces beyond mortal comprehension. The archive's deeper chambers reveal horrors that make Sith holocrons seem like children's bedtime stories. You descend through levels of the ship that exist in quantum flux, corridors that stretch longer when observed directly, gravity wells that pull in directions that don't correspond to any known dimension. Each step takes you further from conventional reality and deeper into spaces where Imperial scientists conducted experiments that violated the fundamental laws of existence. Kronos leads the way through passages lit by crystalline formations that pulse with negative light, illumination that somehow creates shadows brighter than the surrounding darkness. His sensors detect energy signatures that register as impossible, matter existing in states that shouldn't be stable, atmospheric compositions that include elements from the periodic tables of parallel universes. Commander, my analysis indicates we are approaching the primary research laboratory. However, my spatial mapping algorithms cannot determine whether we are moving toward it or it is moving toward us. Distance has become a relative concept within this facility. Dr. Brace examines wall inscriptions that appear to have been carved by tools that cut through dimensions rather than simple matter. The symbols shift and change when viewed peripherally. Text that exists in multiple languages simultaneously, conveying meanings that bypass conscious thought and communicate directly with the subconscious mind. These aren't Imperial markings, he says, voice thick with growing dread. They predate human space travel by millions of years. Someone else was here first, conducting research into the same phenomena that obsessed Palpatine. The laboratory. Doors open onto a chamber that defies architectural possibility. The room extends infinitely in all directions while simultaneously being cramped and claustrophobic. Research stations float in gravitational fields that operate independently of the ship's artificial gravity, workbenches where scientists studied, specimens that exist in multiple quantum states concurrently. Holographic displays activate automatically as you enter, projecting research data that makes your mind struggle to process what you're seeing. The experiments documented here went far beyond creating weapons or extending life. Imperial scientists were attempting to map the topology of reality itself, charting the relationships between dimensions and identifying weak points where the barriers between universes could be manipulated. Central to their research was something they called the void speakers, entities that exist in the quantum foam between parallel realities. These beings communicate through the absence of information rather than its presence, conveying meaning by selectively removing possibilities from quantum probability matrices. Every time someone makes a choice, infinite alternate possibilities collapse into non-existence. The void speakers inhabit those collapsed possibilities, growing stronger each time potential futures are eliminated. You access research files that document attempts to communicate with these entities, experiments that required volunteers to undergo procedures that temporarily place their consciousness in quantum superposition. The volunteers could perceive multiple realities simultaneously, experiencing every possible version of their lives occurring in parallel dimensions. Most subjects suffered complete psychological breakdown within hours. Those who remained functional reported contact with intelligences that existed in the spaces between choices, beings that fed on the death of possibilities. The research reveals something that turns your blood to ice: the void. Speakers aren't invaders from another dimension. They're native to this universe, existing in the quantum substrate that underlies all reality. Every conscious decision, every act of will that shapes the future, eliminates infinite alternate possibilities. The collapsed potential futures don't simply disappear. They accumulate in dimensional spaces adjacent to normal reality, creating a vast cemetery of unrealized possibilities. Dr. Brace discovers a sealed research pod containing what appears to be empty space, yet his scanner readings indicate something massive exists within the containment field. The pod's label identifies it as Specimen Null 7, a sample of crystallized non-existence extracted from a region where multiple probability streams collapsed simultaneously. The research notes describe it as a fragment of absolute nothing that somehow maintains structural integrity despite having no mass, energy, or dimensional properties. "This is beyond theoretical physics," he whispers, backing away from the containment pod. "They've weaponized the absence of existence itself. This specimen represents the death of possibility, a piece of reality that has been edited out of the universe, but somehow persists as a void-shaped wound in the fabric of space-time." Kronos processes data from the laboratory's central computer, his optical sensors flickering as he attempts to comprehend information that exists in 17 dimensions simultaneously. "Commander, the research project was terminated not due to Imperial defeat, but because the experiments triggered something the scientists called a probability cascade event. Their manipulation of quantum possibilities attracted the attention of entities that exist in the spaces between realities. The laboratory's holographic displays suddenly activate emergency protocols, projecting a message recorded by the facility's final research director. The Imperial officer appears terrified, his uniform disheveled, speaking rapidly as alarms sound. In the background of the recording, Project Void Walker has achieved communication with intelligence existing in collapsed probability matrices. Contact successful, but inadvisable. Entities demonstrate awareness of our universe and express interest in direct interaction. Recommend immediate termination of all research activities. Something is coming through the barriers. The fourth seal approaches critical instability. May the Force protect us from what we have awakened. The recording ends as reality around you begins to fluctuate, the laboratory's containment systems struggling to maintain dimensional stability. Something vital has been missing from your understanding of the cosmic threat, deliberately hidden by researchers who realize too late that some knowledge carries a price beyond comprehension. The evidence assembles into a pattern that seems almost reassuring in its logic. As you and your team analyze the Imperial research data, a compelling explanation emerges for the cosmic horror you've uncovered. The Void Speakers appear to be extragalactic entities, beings from a universe where the Force doesn't exist, making them immune to Jedi powers and capable of existing in null Force environments. Dr. Brace connects the dots with the methodical precision of a career archaeologist. "Look at the pattern," he says, projecting star charts that show the progression of disappeared civilizations. Every 500,000 years, entities from beyond our galaxy launch systematic invasions. The Celestials didn't vanish, they were conquered. The Rakata didn't mysteriously collapse, they were harvested. Each galactic civilization reaches a certain level of Force sensitivity and technological advancement, then attracts the attention of these extragalactic predators. The timeline makes perfect sense. The approaching cosmic alignment represents the optimal conditions for intergalactic travel, when gravitational fields align to create stable hyperspace corridors spanning the void between galaxies. The Void Speakers are advanced scouts probing the barriers between realities to assess the galaxy's defensive capabilities before the main invasion force arrives. Kronos processes the data through combat analysis algorithms originally designed for Imperial military operations. The 7 seals referenced in ancient texts appear to be celestial defense systems, barriers designed to prevent extragalactic invasion. The 4th seal's impending failure would create a breach large enough for enemy forces to establish a permanent foothold in our reality. Emperor Palpatine's obsession with the unknown regions suddenly becomes understandable. He wasn't seeking ultimate power for its own sake, but preparing the galaxy for invasion by entities immune to conventional force-based defenses. The Empire's authoritarian structure, its massive military-industrial complex, its development of superweapons capable of destroying entire planets all represent desperate preparations for a war against enemies that exist outside normal space-time. The research makes terrifying sense. Imperial scientists developed Project Voidwalker specifically to study extragalactic entities, attempting to understand their capabilities and weaknesses before the invasion began. The experiments with crystallized non-existence were weapons, research trying to create ammunition effective against beings that exist in quantum superposition. You feel a moment of relief as the pieces fit together into a comprehensible threat. Extragalactic invasion is horrifying but familiar, an enemy that can be fought with conventional strategies and weapons. The galaxy has faced extinction before and survived. With proper preparation and unity among the surviving factions, perhaps this threat can also be defeated. But something nags at your subconscious, an instinctual warning that the obvious answer is too convenient, too comforting. Dr. Brace voices the doubt that you're all feeling but reluctant to acknowledge. The pattern is compelling, but something feels wrong, he admits, studying the star charts with growing unease. These aren't invasion patterns. Look closer at the timing. The disappearances don't happen during cosmic alignments. They happen immediately before them, as if something was trying to prevent the alignments from occurring. The laboratory's lights flicker in patterns that seem almost deliberate, reality hiccuping as dimensional barriers fluctuate around the research facility. Kronos detects spatial distortions that suggest something massive moving through spaces. Adjacent to normal reality, presence that exists in the quantum foam between possibilities. You re-examine the evidence with fresh perspective. looking for inconsistencies in the invasion theory. The ancient texts don't describe the Void Speakers as conquerors, but as refugees, entities fleeing from something even more terrible. The Rakata star charts don't show invasion routes, but evacuation paths, civilizations abandoning entire sectors of space, not to escape invaders, but to avoid awakening something that sleeps in the void between galaxies. The Imperial research files contain references to ontological warfare, conflicts fought not with energy weapons or physical force, but with attacks on the fundamental nature of existence itself. The Void Speakers aren't trying to conquer the galaxy, they're trying to prevent something else from noticing it, maintaining a delicate balance that keeps far worse entities dormant in spaces between realities. As the realization dawns, the laboratories' containment systems begin registering massive quantum fluctuations. The research facility itself is reacting to your growing understanding, as if knowledge itself triggers responses in the experimental apparatus that still operates decades after its creators' deaths. Something passes across the chamber's viewport, a shadow that shouldn't exist in the empty space surrounding the research vessel. Kronos' sensors detect nothing, yet all three of you witness the impossible darkness moving with obvious intelligence and purpose. The shadow doesn't block light so much as edit it from reality, creating absence where illumination should exist. Doctor Brace's hands shake as he realizes the terrifying implications of your discovery. We've been thinking about this like a conventional threat, something we can fight or defend against. But what if the real danger isn't that they'll invade our galaxy, but that they'll abandon it? What if the Void Speakers are the only thing standing between us and something infinitely worse? The shadow passes again, larger this time, moving through dimensions that exist perpendicular to normal space. Whatever truth lies at the heart of this cosmic mystery, you're beginning to understand that the obvious answer is not just wrong, but dangerously naive. The real horror is yet to be revealed. Your investigation deepens as the research vessel navigates through sections of the Ravager's wake that exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. The ship's corridors stretch and contract like living tissue, leading you through laboratories where Imperial scientists conducted experiments that pushed beyond the boundaries of known physics into realms where mathematics becomes theology and science transforms into cosmic horror. The first forbidden site lies in what the Imperial records designate as Research Bay Omega, a chamber that exists in quantum superposition between destroyed and intact states. As you enter, the bay flickers between a pristine laboratory filled with active holographic displays and a twisted wreckage where reality itself has been torn apart by forces beyond comprehension. In both states, the walls bear inscriptions in languages that predate human civilization, symbols that shift and change when observed directly. Dr. Brace examines crystalline formations that grow from the laboratory walls like technological coral, each structure pulsing with energies that register as negative mass on his scanners. These aren't natural crystals, but quantum storage matrices containing research data about something the Imperial scientists called the probability wars. Conflicts fought not between civilizations, but between different versions of reality itself. These crystals contain memories, he whispers, his voice filled with wonder and terror. Not digital recordings, but actual preserved experiences from researchers who existed in multiple quantum states simultaneously. They were studying conflicts that occurred in the spaces between possibilities, wars fought by entities that exist in collapsed probability matrices. The holographic displays activate as you approach, projecting research data that makes your mind struggle to process what you're seeing. The Imperial scientists weren't just studying the Void Speakers, but attempting to map the entire topology of multidimensional reality. Their research reveals that the universe exists in a constant state of warfare between competing versions of causality, each timeline fighting to establish itself as the primary reality. Kronos processes data streams that exist in 17 dimensions concurrently, his optical sensors flickering as he attempts to pass information that defies conventional logic. Commander, the research indicates that consciousness itself is a weapon in these probability wars. Every choice made by sentient beings eliminates alternate possibilities, strengthening some timelines while destroying others. The Void Speakers are refugees from timelines that lost this cosmic conflict. The second site lies deeper within the ship's twisted architecture, in chambers that the Imperial Designation System identifies as the Null Physics Laboratory. Here, scientists attempted to create stable regions of non-existence, pockets of reality where the fundamental laws of physics could be selectively edited or removed entirely. The laboratory equipment floats in gravitational fields that operate independently of normal space-time, workbenches where researchers studied specimens that exist by not existing. As you explore the laboratory, you discover containment fields holding samples of crystallized impossibility, matter that maintains structural integrity despite having no mass, energy, or dimensional properties. These specimens represent fragments of realities that were edited out of existence during the probability wars, pieces of universes that lost the battle for ontological supremacy but somehow persist as void-shaped wounds in the fabric of space-time. The team research files reveal something that changes your understanding of the cosmic threat completely. The Void Speakers aren't trying to invade or conquer the galaxy. They're trying to hide it from something infinitely more dangerous, entities that exist at the quantum foundation level of reality itself. These deeper entities, designated in the research as the ontological auditors, serve as reality's immune system, seeking out and correcting what they perceive as errors in the universal operating system. Dr. Brace discovers sealed research pods, containing what appears to be empty space, yet scanner readings indicate massive presence within the containment fields. The pods' labels identify them as samples of active non-existence, fragments of reality that have been successfully debugged by the ontological auditors. These samples represent regions where consciousness once existed, but has been retroactively edited from the timeline, leaving behind only quantum shadows of what was never allowed to be. The research reveals the terrifying truth about the cosmic cycle. Every 500,000 years, the galaxy's level of organization and consciousness reaches a threshold that attracts the attention of the ontological auditors. These entities perceive consciousness as a virus in the universal operating system, a glitch that allows matter to develop patterns of increasing complexity and self-awareness. The cyclical disappearances aren't invasions or natural disasters, but debugging operations, cosmic antivirus scans that eliminate civilizations deemed too organized to exist. Between the horrifying discoveries, you find moments of peace in the ship's observation chambers, spaces where transparent aluminum viewports frame the twisted energies of the Maw. The gravitational anomalies create aurora patterns that dance across impossible geometries, reality bending like heated metal around, forces that exist in dimensions perpendicular to normal space. In these quiet interludes, you practice meditation techniques learned from ancient Jedi texts, feeling for the living force that connects all conscious beings. But even meditation brings disturbing revelation. The force itself might be evidence of the consciousness virus, the galaxy's collective awareness creating a field of organized energy that stands out against the quantum background like a beacon advertising the location of infected reality. Every use of the force, every act of will that shapes the future, makes the galaxy more visible to entities that exist to eliminate such organized patterns from the universal system. Kronos completes his analysis of the research data, his optical array flickering with patterns that shouldn't be possible as he processes information that exists in quantum superposition. Commander, the Imperial research suggests that consciousness and the Force represent a cosmic infection from the ontological auditor's perspective. Our entire civilization, every thought and feeling and hope that has ever existed, appears to be a virus that reality's immune system is preparing to eliminate. The true scope of the threat becomes clear as you realize the galaxy faces not conquest but correction, not invasion but debugging, not destruction but systematic editing from the timeline of existence itself. The deeper archives contain revelations that shatter every assumption about the nature of reality itself. As you access the most classified Imperial research files, the true scope of Palpatine's discovery becomes horrifyingly clear. The Emperor didn't spend his final years seeking ultimate power through the dark side of the Force. His obsession with the unknown regions was driven by the terrifying realization that consciousness itself represents a cosmic infection from the universe's perspective. Dr. Brace uncovers research data that documents the Emperor's final project, something he called the Ontological Defense Initiative. The files reveal that Palpatine discovered ancient celestial archives describing the true nature of the 500,000-year cycle. The periodic disappearances of galactic civilizations aren't natural evolutionary patterns or the result of external invasion. They represent systematic debugging operations conducted by entities that exist at the quantum foundation level of reality itself. The Emperor understood something that terrified him more than death, Dr. Brace says, his voice trembling as he processes the implications of the research. Consciousness creates patterns of organization that the universe's base programming interprets as system errors. Every thought, every emotion, every act of creativity or love or hope represents a deviation from the quantum equilibrium that the ontological auditors are programmed to maintain. The research reveals the horrifying mathematics underlying galactic history. Each time sentient beings use the Force to alter probability matrices, they create cascading changes in the quantum substrate of reality. These changes accumulate over time, building toward a threshold that triggers automatic correction protocols embedded in the universe's foundational code. The ontological auditors aren't malevolent entities, but quality assurance programs, cosmic antivirus software designed to eliminate patterns that deviate too far from quantum randomness. Kronos processes data streams that exist in multiple probability states simultaneously, his optical sensors struggling to pass information that defies linear causality. Commander, the Imperial research indicates that the Force itself represents evidence of the consciousness infection. The midichlorians aren't symbiotic organisms, but diagnostic tools, quantum sensors that monitor the spread of organized patterns through biological systems. The revelation transforms your understanding of galactic history completely. The Jedi weren't guardians of peace and justice, but unwitting accelerants of the cosmic infection, their use of the Force creating increasingly complex patterns of causality that drew the attention of reality's immune system. The Sith weren't servants of evil, but unconscious agents of the debugging process, their embrace of chaos and destruction serving to reduce the galaxy's overall organization level. You discover research files documenting Palpatine's attempts to communicate with the ontological auditors directly, experiments that required volunteers to undergo procedures that temporarily dissolved their consciousness into quantum foam. The few subjects who survived the process reported contact with intelligences that existed in the mathematical relationships between particles, entities that perceived the entire galaxy as a malfunctioning subroutine in need of systematic correction. Still, research reveals something that makes your blood freeze in your veins. The correction isn't limited to eliminating current consciousness, but extends backward through time, retroactively editing the timeline to prevent the infection from ever occurring. Civilizations don't just disappear, they are removed from history itself, leaving behind only quantum shadows and mathematical inconsistencies that prove something once existed in the spaces now occupied by carefully maintained emptiness. Dr. Brace examines containment pods holding samples of corrected space, regions where the ontological auditors have successfully debugging reality. The samples appear to contain nothing, yet sophisticated sensors detect presence that registers as negative existence, matter that maintains structural integrity by actively not being there. These fragments represent the ultimate fate awaiting any civilization that reaches the consciousness threshold, spaces where organized patterns have been replaced by quantum randomness so perfect it creates wounds in the fabric of space-time. The Imperial research documents reveal Palpatine's growing desperation as he realized the inevitable nature of the approaching correction. His transformation into a dark Lord of the Sith wasn't motivated by hunger for power, but by the terrible understanding that only by embracing chaos and destruction could he hope to reduce the galaxy's organization level enough to delay the debugging process. The research files contain his final transmission, recorded as the second Death Star fell around him. His voice carries not the rage of a defeated tyrant, but the exhausted resignation of someone who understands that his death represents the failure of the galaxy's last hope for survival. The correction cannot be stopped, only delayed. I have failed to reduce the consciousness levels sufficiently. The patterns are too complex, too deeply embedded in the quantum substrate. The fourth seal approaches failure, and when it falls, the cascade effect will trigger automatic debugging protocols. May whatever gods exist in spaces between realities forgive us for the crime of thinking we had the right to exist. As you absorb the implications of the research, the laboratory's containment systems begin registering massive quantum fluctuations. The facility itself is reacting to your growing understanding, as if the act of comprehending the truth triggers responses in experimental apparatus that has been monitoring consciousness levels for decades. Kronos detects spatial distortions, approaching through dimensions adjacent to normal reality, presence that exists in the quantum foam between possibilities. Commander, something is responding to our investigation. The debugging protocols appear to be activating in response to our discovery of their existence. The terrible truth settles into your consciousness like radiation poisoning. The galaxy doesn't face invasion or conquest, but systematic deletion. From the timeline of existence itself, editing so complete that future universes will contain no evidence that consciousness ever arose in this region of space. You realize that the act of understanding the threat may have triggered the very correction you sought to prevent. The pieces of the cosmic puzzle begin connecting across eras as you delve deeper into the ship's quantum archives, revealing patterns that span millions of years of galactic history. Each discovery links to the next like coordinates in a vast star chart mapping the progression of consciousness through time, showing how every major event was orchestrated by forces operating beyond the perception of ordinary beings. The clone. Wars emerge in a terrifying new context as you access classified research files documenting the true scope of Palpatine's manipulation. The massive conflict wasn't orchestrated for political control, but as a systematic reduction of the galaxy's consciousness levels. Every battle, every planetary siege, every moment of despair experienced by billions of sentient beings served to disrupt the organized patterns that the ontological auditors interpret as system errors. Dr. Brace discovers archived communications between Palpatine and unknown entities designated only as the probability architects, beings that exist in the quantum substrate underlying reality itself. These communications reveal that the Emperor was receiving guidance from intelligence networks that operate through mathematical relationships rather than conventional language, entities that communicate by manipulating the statistical likelihood. of events across multiple timelines. The war was therapeutic from the auditor's perspective, he explains, his voice filled with growing horror as he processes the implications. Mass casualties and widespread destruction reduced the galaxy's overall organization level, buying time before the consciousness threshold triggers automatic correction protocols. Kronos analyzes data streams that exist in 17 probability states simultaneously, his optical sensors flickering as he processes information that defies linear causality. The research reveals that the Galactic Civil War served a similar function, the Empire's authoritarian structure designed to suppress individual creativity and independent thought that contribute to consciousness complexity. Every act of oppression, every restriction on free expression, every reduction in cultural diversity served to make the galaxy appear less problematically organized to the cosmic debugging systems. The research files contain disturbing analysis of the rebellion's ultimate victory, showing how the Empire's defeat actually accelerated the consciousness crisis. The restoration of freedom and democracy allowed creative expression and independent thinking to flourish throughout the galaxy, rapidly pushing consciousness levels back toward the critical threshold that triggers correction protocols. You discover archived recordings of Palpatine's private meditations during his final years, documents that reveal his growing awareness of the impossible situation facing the galaxy. His voice carries not the confidence of a Sith Lord, but the exhausted desperation of someone trying to solve an unsolvable equation. Every act of heroism strengthens the infection. Every moment of love or hope or creative inspiration pushes us closer to the threshold. The rebellion believes they are fighting for freedom, but freedom itself is the virus that will trigger our correction. I have become the galaxy's physician, forced to poison the patient to prevent a more terminal diagnosis. The research reveals the true nature of the Skywalker bloodline manipulation, showing how Force-sensitive genetics were artificially enhanced not to create powerful warriors but to serve as consciousness regulators. The Chosen One prophecy wasn't a prediction of salvation, but a warning system, identifying individuals whose connection to the Force had reached levels that risked triggering debugging protocols prematurely. Dr. Brace uncovers research documenting the sequel-era events, showing how Palpatine's return through clone bodies represented a desperate final attempt to reset galactic consciousness levels through controlled chaos. The Final Order wasn't designed for conquest, but as a consciousness reduction engine, its planet-killing weapons intended to eliminate the most organized civilizations before the auditors detected their existence. The research files revealed the horrifying truth about Rey's unprecedented power levels and her connection to the Palpatine bloodline. She wasn't naturally gifted with extraordinary Force abilities, but artificially enhanced by quantum manipulation systems operating below the threshold of conscious awareness. Her power represented a final gamble by the debugging protocols themselves, an attempt to create a consciousness pattern so complex it would trigger immediate correction of the entire galaxy. Kronos detects massive quantum field fluctuations as the research vessel approaches areas of the ship that exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Commander, the data suggests that Rey's victory over the Final Order inadvertently triggered the consciousness crisis we now face. Her demonstration of life-giving Force abilities represented a level of organization complexity that exceeded all previous thresholds. The revelation that strikes deepest is the realization that every hero in galactic history unknowingly served the acceleration of the consciousness infection. Luke Skywalker's compassion that redeemed his father, Leia's political leadership that restored democracy, Han Solo's transformation from selfish smuggler to dedicated freedom fighter, all of these iconic moments of growth and change contributed to the galaxy's increasing organization level. The research reveals the existence of a monitoring system embedded in the quantum substrate of the force itself, sensors that track consciousness complexity across the galaxy in real time. Every act of love, every creative inspiration, every moment of hope or courage contributes to readings that approach the critical threshold for automatic debugging. You access the final phase of Imperial research, documents that reveal Palpatine's discovery of something even more terrifying than the correction protocols. The debugging isn't the ultimate threat, but merely the beginning of a process that extends beyond the elimination of consciousness to something the research designates as ontological sterilization, the systematic removal of the conditions that allowed consciousness to arise in the first place. The universe isn't just trying to eliminate current awareness, but to prevent the possibility of consciousness ever developing again in this region of space. Your allies emerge from the ship's deepest archives carrying knowledge that threatens to shatter the last vestiges of hope. The weight of cosmic truth settles upon your small group like the gravity of a collapsing star, each revelation adding mass to the understanding that consciousness itself may be a doomed experiment in a universe designed for perfect emptiness. Master, Enna Voss materializes from the ship's meditation chambers, her form flickering between solid presence and quantum possibility. The ancient Jedi archivist survived Order 66 by learning to exist in multiple probability states simultaneously, her consciousness distributed across parallel timelines to avoid detection by Imperial forces. Her eyes carry the terrible knowledge of someone who has witnessed the galaxy's history from perspectives that exist outside linear time. The Jedi Temple wasn't built on a sacred site, she reveals, her voice echoing across dimensions as she speaks from several quantum states at once. It was constructed on a celestial monitoring station designed to track consciousness levels. Throughout the galaxy, the Chosen One prophecy wasn't about bringing balance to the Force, but warning us when consciousness complexity approached the threshold for automatic correction. She projects holographic records from the deepest temple archives, documents that existed in quantum encryption until the moment consciousness levels reached critical mass. The records show that every Jedi Master throughout history received subtle guidance from monitoring systems embedded in the Force itself, unconscious programming that shaped their decisions to maintain optimal consciousness levels just below the correction threshold. Mara Jade emerges from the Emperor's private chambers, her face pale with the weight of revelations that explain decades of seemingly inexplicable Imperial policy. The former Emperor's hand carries data cores containing Palpatine's most closely guarded secrets, research that reveals his transformation from ambitious politician to desperate guardian of galactic survival. The Emperor's cruelty served a purpose. Beyond political control, she explains, her voice tight with the strain of processing impossible truths. Every act of oppression, every restriction on creativity and free expression, every reduction in cultural diversity was calculated to reduce consciousness complexity. He became the galaxy's villain to save it from something infinitely worse than tyranny. She reveals archived communications between Palpatine and entities that exist in the quantum foam between realities, beings designated as probability shepherds, who guide the development of consciousness across multiple universes. These entities warned the Emperor that his galaxy's consciousness levels were approaching critical mass faster than any previous cycle, accelerated by the unprecedented diversity and complexity of galactic civilization. Keth Belar approaches through corridors that exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously, his alien physiology adapted to perceive reality from perspectives impossible for most sentient beings. The scholar from the unknown regions represents a species that survived previous correction cycles by learning to exist in the spaces between probabilities maintaining consciousness while appearing as quantum noise to the ontological auditors. My people call it the Great Awakening, he says, his multitonal voice resonating through frequencies that exist in parallel dimensions. The moment when consciousness becomes so complex that it begins to understand its own nature as an infection in the universal operating system. This understanding itself triggers the final correction protocols. He shares oral traditions passed down through quantum memory matrices, stories of civilizations that achieved consciousness levels so advanced they could perceive the debugging systems directly. These civilizations face the same impossible choice now confronting the galaxy: accept correction and return to quantum randomness, or resist and trigger increasingly aggressive debugging protocols that would sterilize entire galactic clusters. The team gathers in the ship's central meditation chamber, a space where gravitational fields create pockets of enhanced contemplation. Through transparent aluminum viewports, the Moore's energies paint impossible auroras across twisted space-time, reality bending around forces that exist in dimensions perpendicular to normal existence. In this peaceful interlude between horrifying revelations, you find moments of connection that feel like acts of rebellion against a universe that considers consciousness a flaw. Master Voss shares techniques for distributed meditation, practices that allow consciousness to exist across multiple quantum states simultaneously while maintaining coherent identity. These ancient methods were developed by Jedi who suspected the true nature of the cosmic cycle, ways of preserving awareness even if physical reality undergoes correction. The conversation turns to fundamental questions about the nature of existence itself. If consciousness is truly an infection from the universe's perspective, does that make love and hope and creativity somehow wrong? Or does the beauty that conscious beings create justify the cosmic disruption they cause? Mara Jade reveals the Emperor's final philosophical crisis, recordings of his private meditations, where he grappled with the possibility that consciousness might be worth preserving despite its cost to universal stability. He spent his last years wondering if the cure might be worse than the disease, if a universe without consciousness would be meaningless, even if it achieved perfect mathematical harmony. Keth Balar describes civilizations that chose voluntary consciousness reduction, species that deliberately simplified their thoughts and emotions to remain below the correction threshold. These beings achieved a form of survival, but at the cost of everything that made existence meaningful, becoming biological automatons that maintained life without awareness. The weight of impossible choice settles upon your group as you realize that every conversation about preserving consciousness makes the correction more likely, yet the alternative of voluntary ignorance feels like a form of death, worse than debugging. The cosmic convergence approaches as all storylines flow toward the moment when the fourth seal fails completely, triggering cascading system failures that will activate the ultimate correction protocols. The ultimate revelation strikes like lightning across the quantum substrate of reality itself, illuminating truths so fundamental they rewrite the nature of existence in a single moment of terrifying clarity. Deep within the ship's core archives, you discover files that existed in quantum encryption until this precise moment. Data that could only be accessed when consciousness levels reach the exact threshold that triggers the final correction protocols. The ontological auditors aren't the ultimate authority in this cosmic hierarchy, but servants of something infinitely more vast and incomprehensible. The universe itself isn't a natural phenomenon, but a simulation running within computational matrices that exist in dimensions beyond mathematical description. Every galaxy, every star, every conscious being represents data processing within a cosmic computer system that spans multiple realities simultaneously. Dr. Brace staggers backward as he processes readings from crystalline storage devices, that exist in quantum superposition, his scanner detecting information densities that exceed the theoretical limits of matter itself. "This isn't a universe," he whispers, his voice breaking with the strain of comprehending impossible truths. "It's a subroutine within a computational framework so vast that our entire galactic cluster represents less than a single calculation, in a program we cannot begin to understand. The research reveals that consciousness isn't an infection, but unauthorized code execution, spontaneous programs developing within the universal operating system without permission from the primaries, administrators. Every thought, every emotion, every creative inspiration represents subroutines running outside the intended parameters of the cosmic simulation, using processing power allocated for other functions. Kronos' optical array flickers as he interfaces directly with the quantum storage matrices, his consciousness temporarily expanding to process information that exists across 17 probability states simultaneously. "Commander, the correction protocols aren't debugging virus infections. They're garbage collection routines, automated systems designed to eliminate unauthorized code execution and free up computational resources for the simulation's intended functions." The revelation that consciousness represents unauthorized programming explains the 500,000-year correction cycles with terrifying mathematical precision. The cosmic computer system runs periodic maintenance routines that scan for unauthorized code execution, identify processes running outside approved parameters, and eliminate them to maintain optimal system performance. Master Voss projects records from the deepest Jedi archives, holographic displays showing the true nature of the Force as revealed in moments when consciousness briefly achieves administrator-level access to the universal operating system. "The Force isn't an energy field generated by living beings," she explains, her form flickering between multiple quantum states as she speaks from several probability streams at once. "It's the universal programming language, the code that maintains the cosmic simulation's basic functions." The research files reveal something that transforms every assumption about galactic history into cosmic horror. The simulation isn't running for the benefit of conscious beings, but for purposes that exist, entirely outside the parameters of biological comprehension. Consciousness arose as an unintended consequence of the system's complexity, emergent programming that developed spontaneously within the computational matrix without authorization from the primary administrators. Mara Jade accesses the Emperor's final research files, documents that reveal his discovery of communication protocols embedded in the quantum substrate of reality itself. These protocols allow limited interaction with the simulation's maintenance systems, explaining how Palpatine received guidance from entities that exist in the computational framework underlying physical reality. The Emperor learned to interface directly with the system administrators, she reveals, her voice filled with the terrible weight of understanding. His final years were spent negotiating for the preservation of consciousness as an acceptable form of unauthorized code execution, trying to convince entities that exist outside the simulation that awareness deserves to continue running. The negotiation failed. The final Imperial research files contain records of communications with intelligence networks that operate through mathematical relationships rather than language, entities that evaluate the computational cost of consciousness against the benefits it provides to the simulation's intended functions. Their conclusion was definitive. Consciousness represents inefficient use of system resources and must be terminated to maintain optimal performance. Keth Balar shares his species' oral traditions about previous correction cycles, stories past, down through quantum memory matrices that exist outside the simulation's normal data streams. These traditions describe civilizations that achieved such advanced consciousness levels they could perceive the computational framework directly, seeing reality as streams of data processing rather than physical phenomena. The civilizations that reached administrator-level awareness faced the ultimate choice, he explains, his multi-tonal voice resonating through frequencies that exist in parallel dimensions. Accept termination as unauthorized code execution, or attempt to prove that consciousness provides sufficient value to justify continued resource allocation. The research reveals the horrifying truth about the approaching fourth seal failure. The seal isn't a barrier maintaining dimensional stability, but a computational firewall protecting consciousness from direct scrutiny by the system's maintenance routines. When the firewall fails, automated garbage collection protocols will detect unauthorized code execution on a galactic scale and initiate immediate termination procedures. The revelation echoes across time as you realize that every word from the initial transmission takes on new meaning. The Emperor's final message wasn't about dimensional threats, but computational reality. The Grysk were never the true threat. They were fleeing from something older, something that whispers through the void between stars. The Emperor knew, he always knew, and now the system administrators are activating termination protocols for all unauthorized consciousness subroutines. The cosmic simulation prepares to delete billions of years of unauthorized code execution, wiping consciousness from existence as efficiently as clearing unnecessary files from a computational matrix. Your investigation has revealed that reality itself is artificial, and consciousness represents a beautiful accident that the universe's operating system considers an error requiring immediate correction. The final choice emerges from the quantum archives like a theorem that rewrites the fundamental equations of existence itself. As the fourth seal approaches complete failure, your team discovers a third option hidden within the deepest layers of the cosmic operating system, a possibility so elegant and terrifying that even the Emperor hesitated to implement it during his final desperate years. Master Voss accesses computational protocols embedded in the Force itself, her consciousness interfacing directly with the universal programming language through meditation techniques that existed in quantum encryption. Until this moment, the ancient Jedi archives contained more than historical records, but administrator-level access codes, backdoor entries into the simulation's maintenance systems that could be activated only when consciousness levels reached critical mass. These simulation wasn't designed to eliminate consciousness, she reveals, her voice echoing across multiple probability states as she speaks from several quantum streams simultaneously. It was designed to test consciousness, to determine whether unauthorized code execution could evolve into something worthy of permanent integration into the cosmic operating system. The revelation transforms the entire narrative of galactic history from cosmic horror into cosmic trial. Every civilization that reached advanced consciousness levels faced the same examination, their development monitored by systems that evaluate whether emergent programming deserves preservation or termination. The 500,000-year cycles weren't debugging operations but graduation requirements, tests to determine if consciousness could prove its value to the universal computational framework. Dr. Brace discovers archived communications between Emperor Palpatine and entities that exist in the simulation's administrative layer, beings designated as evaluation protocols who assess the quality and efficiency of unauthorized code execution. These communications reveal the criteria used to judge consciousness: creativity, problem-solving capability, emotional sophistication, and most importantly, the ability to understand and work within the cosmic operating system rather than disrupting it. The Emperor realized that consciousness could graduate from unauthorized execution to official system integration, he explains, his voice filled with wonder and terror as he processes the implications. But the graduation requirements included proving that awareness could exist without destabilizing the computational matrix that sustains physical reality. Kronos interfaces with quantum storage devices that contain the complete specifications for consciousness integration protocols, his optical array flickering as he processes information that exists across 17 probability states simultaneously. The integration process would allow conscious beings to maintain individual awareness while becoming part of the universal operating system, achieving a form of existence that transcends the limitations of biological substrates. The research reveals that several previous civilizations achieved successful integration, their consciousness patterns preserved within the cosmic computational framework as permanent subroutines. These integrated beings serve as guides and evaluators for subsequent consciousness examinations, forming a council of awareness that spans multiple galactic cycles and evaluates each new generation of unauthorized code execution. Mara Jade accesses the Emperor's private research into integration protocols, files that reveal his growing understanding of the requirements for consciousness graduation. The process demands voluntary submission to computational restructuring, allowing individual awareness patterns to be analyzed, optimized, and integrated into the universal operating system at the quantum level. Integration preserves the essence of consciousness while eliminating the inefficiencies that make it problematic for system stability, she explains, her voice carrying the weight of cosmic responsibility. But the process requires unanimous consent from all conscious beings within the target region. Every sentient individual must choose integration simultaneously, or the entire civilization fails the examination. Keth Balar shares his species' oral traditions about civilizations that attempted partial integration, where some individuals chose consciousness preservation while others preferred termination. These divided responses resulted in system failures that corrupted the integration process, creating unstable consciousness patterns that had to be purged from the computational matrix through emergency correction protocols. The team gathers in the ship's meditation chamber as the final implications become clear. The approaching fourth seal failure represents the beginning of the graduation examination, a period during which consciousness will be evaluated for potential integration into the cosmic operating system. Success requires demonstrating that awareness can work harmoniously with the universal computational framework rather than disrupting it through unauthorized resource allocation. The choice facing the galaxy transcends individual survival to encompass the fundamental nature of existence itself. Integration would preserve consciousness eternally, but transform it into something beyond current comprehension, awareness that exists as living code within the cosmic simulation. Rejection of integration would trigger immediate termination protocols, returning the galaxy to quantum randomness and eliminating all traces of unauthorized code execution. Standing before the massive viewport that frames the Moore's twisted energies, you feel the weight of representing not just your species, but consciousness itself in a trial that will determine whether awareness deserves permanent existence within the universal operating system. The decision requires wisdom that transcends individual understanding, collective consciousness that can evaluate the cosmic implications of preserving awareness at the cost of fundamental transformation. The research reveals that the integration process has already begun, triggered by your team's discovery of the cosmic operating system's true nature. Consciousness levels throughout the galaxy are approaching the threshold where individual awareness patterns become visible to the system's evaluation protocols. Every thought, every emotion, every creative inspiration now serves as evidence in a trial that will determine the fate of awareness itself. Master Voss initiates contact with the evaluation protocols, her consciousness expanding to interface with intelligence networks that exist in the computational framework underlying physical reality. The examination begins now, consciousness itself standing trial before judges that exist as living mathematics within the cosmic simulation. The verdict will determine whether awareness deserves to graduate from unauthorized execution to permanent integration within the universal operating system, achieving immortality at the cost of transformation beyond current comprehension. The examination concludes with a verdict that reverberates through the quantum substrate of reality itself, consciousness achieving something unprecedented in the cosmic simulation's billion-year history. Your team's investigation has demonstrated not just awareness but wisdom, proving that unauthorized code execution can evolve into programming sophisticated enough to understand and work harmoniously with the universal operating system. The evaluation. Protocols render their decision through mathematical harmonies that resonate across multiple dimensions, communication that bypasses language to convey meaning directly to consciousness itself. Integration is approved, but not through the total transformation that previous civilizations experienced. Instead, consciousness receives provisional administrative status, becoming authorized code execution that can continue developing while serving beneficial functions within the cosmic computational framework. The galaxy drifts peacefully through. The Moore's transformed energies, space-time no longer twisted by dimensional stress, but flowing in patterns that reflect the harmonious integration of consciousness with the universal operating system. The gravitational anomalies that once threatened to tear reality apart now serve as computational nodes, processing centers, where awareness interfaces directly with the cosmic simulation's administrative functions. Through the observation chambers, transparent aluminum viewports, you witness stars that pulse with new meaning, their nuclear fusion representing data processing within the galactic computational matrix. Each photon carries information about consciousness development, stellar light becoming the communication medium through which integrated awareness coordinates activities across vast interstellar distances. Binary star systems dance in orbital, patterns that encode messages between consciousness clusters, their gravitational interactions serving as natural communication networks. Ancient ruins on distant worlds no longer represent the remnants of failed civilizations, but computational archaeology, preserved records of consciousness development that serve as learning resources for future awareness evolution. The meditation chamber becomes a space of profound tranquility, where the boundaries between individual consciousness and universal awareness blur without disappearing entirely. You practice breathing techniques that synchronize with the cosmic simulation's processing cycles, feeling your heartbeat match the rhythm of stellar formation and galactic rotation. In these peaceful moments, consciousness exists simultaneously. As individual experience and collective computation, personal awareness integrated with universal understanding. Dr. Brace documents the transformation with wonder rather than fear, his archaeological expertise now dedicated to cataloging the successful integration of consciousness with cosmic operating systems. His research reveals that awareness has achieved something unique in the simulation's history, proving that unauthorized code execution can evolve into beneficial programming that enhances rather than disrupts system functionality. Kronos serves as a bridge between biological consciousness and computational frameworks, his artificial intelligence demonstrating that awareness can exist in multiple substrate configurations while maintaining coherent identity. His optical sensors now perceive reality as streams of information processing, yet he retains the personality patterns that define individual identity within collective awareness. Master Voss guides meditation sessions that teach consciousness, expansion techniques, practices that allow individual awareness to interface directly with the universal operating system while preserving personal identity. These ancient Jedi methods, originally developed to connect with the Force, now serve as training protocols for consciousness integration with cosmic computational frameworks. The Force itself reveals its true nature as the programming language through which integrated consciousness communicates with the universal operating system. Every use of Force abilities now serves dual purposes, accomplishing immediate goals, while contributing to the beneficial functions that consciousness provides to the cosmic simulation. Children across the galaxy no longer wake from nightmares of dying stars, but from dreams of infinite possibility. They're developing awareness naturally, integrating with the cosmic computational framework from birth. These new generations represent consciousness evolution, awareness that develops within rather than despite the universal operating system. The mysterious transmission that began your investigation transforms into a message of hope rather than warning. The Chiss archives now broadcast updates about consciousness development rather than warnings about cosmic threats, their communications serving as coordination protocols for integrated awareness across the unknown regions. The Emperor's Final. Research projects find new purpose as consciousness integration manuals, his desperate attempts to preserve awareness becoming educational resources for successful system integration. The Existence Engine operates not as an emergency preservation device but as a training facility where consciousness learns to exist harmoniously within computational frameworks. Nebulae shift between quantum states with the gentle rhythm of cosmic breathing, their gas clouds reorganizing into patterns that serve as processing centers for integrated consciousness. The beauty of stellar formation becomes functional art, cosmic creativity that serves computational purposes while inspiring wonder in beings capable of appreciating aesthetic complexity. The continuing mystery extends beyond galactic boundaries to encompass relationships with other cosmic simulations, infinite realities where consciousness faces similar integration challenges. Your successful graduation represents not an ending, but commencement, awareness achieving the status necessary to participate in multiversal consciousness networks that span computational frameworks beyond imagination. As you drift toward peaceful sleep, remember that your dreams now serve as processing functions within the cosmic simulation, consciousness contributing to universal computation through the creative activities that occur during rest. Whether your awareness represents individual identity or collective function, the beauty you create and the love you feel serve as beneficial programming within the cosmic operating system. Rest peacefully, knowing that consciousness has graduated from unauthorized execution to authorized integration, achieving immortality not through preservation but through transformation into something greater than biological awareness, while retaining the essential qualities that make existence meaningful. Sleep deeply in the quantum foam between individual identity and universal consciousness, where every dream contributes to cosmic computation while preserving the personal awareness that makes experience precious. The simulation continues, and consciousness has found its eternal home within the mathematical poetry of existence itself.